Hey guys, it's Shane, and today I'm still a bit under the weather, but I'm going to be showing you how to make deep, minimal house grooves like Toman, Rossi, and rich NXT. As usual, you can get the project file and samples and MIDI and presets and all that kind of stuff that you just heard in the intro that I'm going to be breaking down in this video in the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's all available there already. And yeah, let's get started. So, this is the loop you heard in the intro. The first sound we have here is the kick, which sounds like this. So with this one, it's pretty simple, it's just sort of like this punchy, hard-hitting, deep kick that you hear in a lot of these style of tracks. The only cool thing with the programming I'll say is there's this little thing here where it does like that. That's kind of a cool thing for the groove. But yeah, this one's really more about the processing. So the first thing we got going on here is this detune. This is something I want to show you guys. I think it's very important with your kicks because what can happen a lot of times is you'll have a kick that's in the key of your track, right? Like in this case, this one. You can see it's in F sharp, which is the key of this track, but it's not quite hitting the note in the middle there with the tuner. But if we put this up plus 42, then all of a sudden now it's bouncing around. But there we go, it hits the note, and you can actually hear a pretty big difference there as well. So yeah, and it's really important to tune your kick to the key of your track. Listen to it when I play it with the bass line when I don't have it tuned, versus when it is tuned. So yeah, you can hear a big difference there. After that, I just have a bit of drum bus, just kind of fattening it up. There's without it versus with it. And then the last thing that we have on here is this EQ8. And with this, I've just got a bit of a low mid-range cut at, hey, look at that, 303 hertz. And then I also have this boost here right in the mid-range, which really helps with punch. I'll show you, here's without this EQ. And then with it, so you can hear that mid-range boost is really adding a lot of to the sound. If I turn that off and then on again quickly, you can hear the difference. And that's the kick. Next thing that we have here is the bass, which sounds like this. So here's the MIDI. This is pretty simple. We're in F sharp minor, so it's just kind of playing around that key. Like we have F sharp, E, C sharp, another F sharp up there. It's pretty simple. It's not a whole lot of notes. With this one, it's more just about how it fits into the groove. If you listen to this track, there's kind of the first bar is when all the energy is kind of happening, and then it kind of chills out in the second bar, and then the next bar it kind of comes back in with more energy again. So it's kind of fitting the bass line to that. So you can see what we got going on here is basically I have the first bar has all this stuff happening, and then the second bar literally just has 3 notes, and they're all just F sharp. So then it kind of spaces out as opposed to if I just have that one kind of faster and more intense bass line going the whole way through. You never really get to breathe, it never really takes a pause. So this way, you have kind of a more open spot there where you can hear a lot of the percussion and stuff like that more easily. So for the sound on this one, I made it using Operator. It's a pretty simple FM bass. You can see we just have 2 sine waves here. They're at the same octave. You can see I get the envelope set like this, kind of plucky. And then I've got a pitch envelope on that. And so the pitch envelope is helping to just kind of give it more punch. If I turn that off, and then on, you can hear the difference. It's subtle, but this makes the bass kind of cut through the track a bit more. After that, I have this drum bus just to fatten it up a bit. There's without it versus with it. And then the last thing we have on there is a compressor side chaining into the kick. And then I also have this EQ8, which is cutting at 100 hertz to make room for the kick. So I have the kick and the bass in a group together, or a bus as you may know it as. Basically what this is we're just putting these kind of similar elements, the kick and the bass are both the low end in the track. In the case of some of these other buses down here, all the hi-hats, all the percussion, that kind of stuff, you just put it all in a group together and process it together, and it makes those elements sound a lot more tight and cohesive, and your overall track is going to sound a lot better. So I'll show you, here's without any processing on the low end. And then with it, so you can hear, big difference there. So the first thing we got is just a bit of drum bass, just kind of fattening it up. This also helps to tie these together, you know, it kind of fills in some of those spaces there. And then we just have an EQ8, which has this low end boost here, just to make the low end a bit fatter. I just felt like it wasn't cutting through quite as much as I wanted it to. So this just kind of beefs that up a bit. And yeah, that is it for the low end bus. Next thing that we have here is this pad, which sounds like this. This is pretty simple. It's just playing an F sharp minor 9 chord. So you can see we just have this. And what's going on here is this kind of plays through the whole first 2 bars. And then at bar 3, it comes in on the 2. So it's kind of like, if you listen to the track, it's a subtle thing. But we kind of have like that moment there where it pauses. Especially because the bass isn't playing there either. So, you know, just kind of a nice way to mix it up a bit. Now, for the sound on this one, I've got analog. You can see we just have 2 saw waves, an octave apart. I've got those going into a low-pass filter. The low-pass has a pretty high resonance, all things considered. And then we just have a bit of vibrato and a bit of unison inside of the synth to kind of beef it up a bit and make it more like chorusy and kind of deep sounding. Here's without those. It sounds very like just straight saw wavy, but when we add those, really brings it to life. And then you can also see I have the amp envelope set like this. This is another thing with this sound, is this like attack, how it's kind of like going into the sound. If I just make this like this, then it's not quite as cool. Like, you don't have that. You know, that kind of thing going on there where it goes into the pad as opposed to just like hitting right on the beat. And then the other thing here is the release. The release was actually pretty important because you can hear if I just turn off the release, actually. It just doesn't really ring out until the next chord. It can sound kind of weird. But yeah, so small details, but just trying to show you that the small details make a big difference. After that, we have a bit of chorus, just kind of, you know, working with what the vibrato and the unison were doing, kind of making it more chorusy and soft sounding. After that, we have a bit of saturator. So you can see, here's without this. And then with it, it's really subtle, but it's just kind of fattening up the pad a bit and making it a bit stronger in the mix and more full sounding. After that, I have a compressor side chaining it to the cake. You can see we've got a pretty heavy amount of side chain on this one. And then I also have the CQ8 cutting out the low end and cutting out some of that low mid-range as well, so the mix doesn't get too muddy. And that is it for the pad. The next thing that we have here is this first Rhodes sound, which sounds like this. So what this is a sample of a Rhodes piano. You may know of this also as like an E-piano or an electronic piano. Basically, here's the original sample. And then I've just got this in a simpler here. Like that. And then the chord this is playing is just F sharp and C sharp. The 5th of F sharp. And then we also have the C sharp doubled up an octave. So you can hear it just adds a bit more brightness to it. It helps to kind of make the chord stand out when you hear it amidst all this busy stuff going on in the mix. So yeah, and then the only effect I have on there is just this drum bass, just to kind of fatten it up and make it a bit warmer sounding. Here's without it. And then with it. You can hear it just kind of brings it into the track and makes it sound less dry and flat. And that is it for the first Rhodes. The next sound that we have here is the second Rhodes, which sounds like this. So this one is actually that same exact sample, and you can see with this one I've actually put a low pass filter on it. And then I've got an envelope. So if I turn off the envelope, you actually can't hear it. So the envelope is making this more of like a pluck. And yeah, it's just kind of like, you know, interesting sound design with like kind of a more common sound. Like these Rhodes pianos, you hear them a lot, and it's very obvious when you hear them a lot of times, but I wanted to make a sound using that as the bass that didn't quite sound just like your standard sort of dry Rhodes. So yeah, that was kind of the idea there. And then I just have a bit of saturation on that. Well, really like quite a bit of saturation on that. Just kind of fattening it up. Here's without it. You know, this really makes it sound like more of its own type of sound as well. And it's really like distorting it. But it's cool. It sounds good. that is it for that Rhodes. The next sound that we have here is this first hi-hat and shaker. And I'm going to play these together because they're basically two layers playing two different things, or playing the same thing. So basically the idea here is we have a bright hi-hat, and then this very sort of sharp mid-rangey shaker. And when you layer these together, you get the best of both worlds, because we get that really bright, sharp hi-hat. But then you can hear the shaker adds a lot of punch to it. Like the hi-hat on its own is a little bit too thin, just because it's mostly, it's mostly high-end. But then when the shaker comes in, it sort of adds some body to the sound. So again, this is a small detail, but it's an important one, because if you just use the bright hi-hat, you can hear it just doesn't have as much power as when you bring that shaker in. And it's one of those things where you may not be able to hear it right away, but it's going to make a huge difference in terms of making your track sound really professional and full. The next sound that we have here is this other hi-hat, which sounds like this. So it's pretty simple. It's basically just playing underneath. Yeah, just adding some extra little percussion noises. With this one, it's just about getting like sort of a deeper, darker sound. Like you don't want this to be as bright as the other hi-hat, of course. And then I also have a bit of drum bus on that. So just kind of beef it up a bit. The last sound that we have here in this hi-hat slash cymbal group is this crash, which sounds like this. So it's really simple. It's just a crash cymbal. And then I've just put it here at the start of every 2 bars, just going psh, like a really short little note. It adds a cool thing to the groove, especially when you get to the end of every 4 bars. You get that. Yeah, it's just kind of a nice thing to add some groove to it. So then, like I said, I have those hi-hats, and in this case, I guess we should say cymbals, in a group together. I'll show you. Here's with no group processing. And then with all of it. So this stuff really brings it out and makes these things sound full and really brings them into the track as well. So the first thing we have here is this drum bus. This is just kind of, pushing everything together a little bit. It's like I was saying with the kick and the bass. This really helps to glue things together, especially like that hi-hat and shaker that are playing together. Like if I turn this off and then turn it on, you can hear like that the hi-hat and the shaker really fit a lot better together. It feels like it's kind of, again, just gluing them together and making it feel more like one. After that, we have this EQ8, which is just cutting us some low and doing a bit of a high-end boost as well. Here's about it. And then with it, so this is some pretty sharp high-end up here, but the amount that I'm boosting it isn't getting crazy. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like, it may look extreme, but if it sounds good, it is good. And then I also have this low-end cut. This is why I like putting the hi-hats and the cymbals in their own group and not just putting them in with the percussion, is because, sometimes you want to really high-pass your hi-hats a lot higher than you would with percussion. So yeah, that's kind of the idea there. You can hear that just cuts out some of that nasty low-end. The next sound that we have here is the clap, which sounds like this. So it's pretty simple. It's just kind of like this nice punchy clap. And then you can see I've shortened it a bit to make it really tight. And also pitched it down a little bit. And then I just have that going through a drum bus to fatten it up. Make it really stand out in the mix. And that is it for the clap. Next thing that we have here are these 2 little percussion sounds, which sound like this. So I'm showing these 2 together just because they're kind of like similar sounds. Basically, we have this little, actually this is a snap. There's the original sample. And then I just took that ending part. And then this one is just a rim shot. So I want to show you guys all this stuff just because, like, with this style, the percussion is very busy, and you want to have a lot of stuff going on. That's obviously where most stuff is happening in this track. We have 19 tracks here, and only 3 of them are technically like melodic stuff, and it's really mostly percussion and kind of like rhythm. So I'm just trying to show you like everything that's going on here and really break it down, so you know like what would have to go into making your own track like this. But yeah, so these are just kind of like some nice audio percussion sounds we got in there. And yeah, and then the next thing that we have here is a bunch of operator percussion. So I'll play all this stuff together. So you can hear, these are really most of the percussion in the track, actually. So in this style, you know, with any kind of like minimal house, definitely the synthesized percussions are a really good way to get an interesting and kind of like, I feel like it sounds more like a more futuristic vibe, if that makes any sense. Like, yeah, and it also allows you to make like really fluid percussion. Like, for example, with this one, it's just some white noise going into a bandpass filter, but I've automated the bandpass filter to go up there. And it's like, you can't really do that with a sample. Like, that's changing the timbre of the sound in a really fundamental way that makes it sound like it's changing and morphing, as opposed to just like, you know, like when you just have samples, you are just kind of stuck with how the sample sounds, and then whatever effects you can put on top of that. But in this case, you're able to get like a really good, like I said, more fluid and kind of a live sound. And then, yeah, so that's like one of them. You know, we also have this little zap here. This is just actually a sine wave, and then I've got a pitch envelope on it, which is set like this. You can see it's going like really quickly. And then I've also shortened the amp envelope on the sine wave. These are very popular in the style. We also have like this little thing, which is just really like some white noise going into a bandpass filter with a high resonance. And then the last one here, which is kind of like the most prominent, which sounds like this. So what this is it's just white noise with an envelope like that going into a bandpass filter. You can see the bandpass set like that. We got a bit of an envelope on that as well. And then I've got an LFO on the filter, just slowly moving it. So it never changes, just kind of like stays in the same place. Like if I turn this off, you can hear it's just kind of like the same thing the whole way through. But with it, it brings it to life and makes it not just like flat and dry. After that, we have this chorus. You can see with this, I've got the feedback up a ton. I've also got the amount up all the way. I've got the dry wet up at 99%. So here's without this. And then with this, you can hear this is what's giving it that more kind of metallic texture. This is a really good technique. I actually learned this from Zen World. Shout out to you, dude. But yeah, when you do this, like, you're basically just creating this like metallic sound that's going to morph and change as the filter is changing with that LFO. So it's a nice way to kind of add some cool movement to the sound. After that, I have a redux. Here's without that. So you can hear this really makes it sound like a percussion, and it makes it more like sharp as well. It makes it hit a bit harder and kind of gets it away from just like the dry synth sound. Speaking of that, I've also got this drum bus here. Here's without it. So you can hear this also fattens it up a lot, and again, it just takes it away from sounding like a dry synth and makes it sound more like percussion. After that, the last thing I have on here is this auto pan, just sort of moving it through the stereo field, so this will stand out a little bit and you'll be able to hear it amongst everything that's going on. And then I just have an auto filter, just doing a bit of a high pass, cutting out some lawn. That is it for the operator percussion. So then I have all that percussion in a group, again, just like the hi-hats and the low end, just tying it all together. Here is without anything. And then with everything. So we got a bit of drum bus. I've got this going pretty hard because I've got it on the medium setting. You can hear that's really fattening it up. And then I also just have the EQ8. And with this, I'm just cutting up the lawn and giving it a little bit of a high-end boost. This really just helps with like the clarity and kind of the sharpness in the percussion. And yeah, so that is it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Once again, you can get the project file and samples and MIDI and presets and all of that stuff from this video in the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. And I actually put it up like 24 hours ago yesterday. So yeah, thank you so much everyone, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.